Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be chapter 38 of this reading. I awoke in the hotel, my whole body in pain from the fight, and Jinx placed back in its holster. I saw that I was lying across the right side couch, my head on Wolf's lap. I tried turning my head to the right to see outside, where I noticed that it was still pouring rain. However, I just ignored it and turned back to look up at Wolf, while she gazed peacefully into my eyes and gently pet my head with her right hand. When I looked out at the sky, I also noticed a small glimpse of Fox in her full animal form, looking up at Wolf with a sad and pitiful expression as she whined. My attention on Wolf, I asked, "You okay?" She smiled and replied, "I should be asking you that." We laughed, then she continued, "Don't worry about me, my lord. You were beautiful out there." "Right," I said as I glanced around to try and see everyone else. However, I couldn't get a good picture with my eyes from where I was, so I turned back to Wolf and asked, "Where's everyone else?" Serena and Nanye walked in from the balcony as my wife said, "Thank the creator you're okay, Ray." She then ran up to me and knelt down at my side, where I noticed Baraku sitting next to me at the foot of the couch. "You've been out for a while." Nanya walked over to stand at my wife's right side as the Abeki turned to me and added, "About 2 hours." With a blank expression towards the Abeki, I asked, "And I should care why?" Nanya moved closer to me, our noses barely an inch away, while she smiled and said, "Because that's not all." We stared at each other for a few seconds in silence. Then Serena pulled the husky away and she said, "Down, girl." She then looked back at me and continued, "JJ's here, but he's just standing outside in Central Park. We don't know what he's doing exactly, and he won't speak to any of us. However, he doesn't seem to be doing anything that's endangering anybody." I turned to gaze up at the ceiling for a moment, then closed my eyes as I said, "I find that to be bullshit." Nanya giggled, then said, "Wolf's right. You do look cute sleeping." I just moaned at that, irritated at that comment as I tried to take a nap. I woke up to find that 4 hours had passed, and I was in a little less pain than before, with Wolf still petting my head as I laid in her lap. Fox had stopped begging and curled up next to the entertainment center, with her back facing the TV as she took a simple nap. I looked around but couldn't really see anything, then noticed Kalita was laying on my stomach as Nanye sat at the other end of the couch with the lower part of my legs on her lap. Just about everyone was watching the news, which had nothing to do with anything except more crap, once again with different news reporters. I decided to ask Baraku what was going on, seeing as I couldn't do anything myself at that point. The Hiroga Wolf told me that he and Serena examined me to find that my wounds would take until the end of the month to heal. That wasn't too bad. I've had worse. Amber and Jewel were arguing again, which I couldn't stand, but couldn't do anything about. Wolf and Fox had small arguments every now and then as well, but the arguments mostly consisted of Wolf just barking at Fox for a few seconds. She then demanded that Fox sit down and stay away from her. There was a thing on the news about the fight between Eyeless and I, it being total bullcrap since it was nothing but questions. No one got a good visual of the scene. Some of the questions that I thought were stupid were, "Why didn't I kill him?" Or, "Why didn't he kill me?" "What will happen if that dangerous man comes back?" And etc. Stupid humans. Hearing those questions, all I could think to say to those idiotic humans was, "Shut the fuck up and don't worry about it. It's none of your damn business." But, of course, what human is going to listen? Bunch of idiots. As I mindlessly stared at the TV, watching some dumb soap opera that Nanye and Kalita wanted to watch, Shadow asked, "My lord, could you let me stretch my legs, please?" Why? I asked, while Baraku moved to jump onto my desk and lay across it, curling into his right side as his left faced the kitchen. Well, I'm bored. Can't stand this place you call a soul. It's small, dark, and there's nothing to do. My left eye twitched. Then after a few seconds I said, it's not like there's anything to do out here. Nanya looked over at me, confused, and asked, who are you talking to, Ray? Nobody. I'll show you who's a nobody, Shadow said. I just want to be outside. Well, as much outside as it can get for me. I gave a mild sigh and said, fine. I painfully raised my right hand up to my heart and removed the fox's soul from me, then reached for Rakar with my left hand to place him in it. I then tossed the hilt out onto the floor, where Shadow quickly formed it into a smaller black nine-tailed fox state. Just as I relaxed my arms, Light asked, my lord, can I come out too? I moaned, irritated that I had to move again, then used my left hand to remove her soul. I pulled out Rakar and put her into it. I tossed the stick out, and Light formed it into a smaller white nine-tailed fox. Then the god siblings shook themselves. Afterwards, Light turned back to me and hopped her front paws up onto the couch, where she looked down at me and said, thanks, my lord. She gently licked my right cheek, then turned back to lie on the floor next to her brother. What about you two, Surfric? I asked. My lord, Nanya said, you're starting to scare me. With a smirk, I glanced at the Abeki and said, quiet, Boodles. The Abeki turned herself slightly to me and barked, hey, don't make me bite you, Fluffy. Whatever. Surfric laughed, then responded, nah, I don't mind it in here. I'm used to it. Same here, Wardrick complied. Another hour passed, then I looked over at Shadow and Light. Both slept peacefully next to each other, while I thought, will they ever become true gods of power? Surfric chuckled at that, then replied, that depends. Why is it you wish to know, my lord? I just laid in silence as I watched the siblings. Then after a few seconds I replied, can they ever become normal again? They're as normal as they can get, Wardrick replied. Seeing as they no longer have physical bodies, they can't be held down other than by your own abilities. But you sound concerned, my lord. Are you okay? I just feel as though I've ruined their lives. I don't want them to live like this, forever chained to someone or something, never being able to do as they please. It went silent for everyone for about a minute. Then Surfric asked, do you believe that they can change? Help you along the ways of your journey as we have? I didn't answer. Yet, understanding my silence, Surfric said, very well then, my lord. The next time you use both Rakar and Rokar at their fullest, you must use our souls in order to conjure up their powers. With that, Shadow and Light will have their freedom and their mastery of our arts. How so? I asked. You'll see, Wardrick replied. However, once this is done, my brother and I shall be forever lost in our worlds, claimed by death and erased from existence. So, good night, Endelment. I guess that's it. If I wanted Shadow and Light to live as they pleased, then Surfric and Wardrick had to give up their lives in place. Fair only worked in favor of itself, not to those who wished it. That wasn't fair. If I wanted to remove Father, then what would I have to give? Shut the fuck up and let me deal with it, Amber barked. I was abruptly woken up by the half-bloods arguing to find nothing in my view had changed. The news on TV said a day had passed and was talking about general crap that no one cared about yet again. Kalita had moved to the right side couch and, for some reason, was pacing back and forth across it nervously. I also noticed Joey and Nanalite were here, amazingly not arguing as I stood behind the couch I was on. Stomping around the kitchen, Amber said, "Just because you don't want to fight doesn't mean that I shouldn't." "God damn it, sis," Joel said. "Just let it go. It was just one punk street racer." "Fuck that," Amber yelled. I then heard the two walking out the front door as Amber continued, "I don't give two shits. I'm gonna take that motherfucker out." The door slammed. Then I raised my right hand to massage my forehead and said, "Creator, give me stronger tolerance. Those half-bloods are gonna kill me." "Stupid humans," Natalie said. "They need to grow up." Joey giggled, because he's weird like that, then said, "I don't know. I think it's kind of cute." "Shut up, Joey," the Alicans shouted. Our friend yelped, then pathetically said, "Yes, ma'am." With the balcony door open, Serena leaned over the wall and asked, "You know they're just gonna smash your car up, right?" We heard the sound of tires squealing from a sudden burst of acceleration. Then my wife said, "There they go." After lowering my hand from my head, I looked up at the ceiling and said, "I thought I locked it from her." I think she figured out how to unlock it. My wife then turned to head inside as she said, "Anyways." She closed the balcony door behind her with her right hand. She filled it with her medallion with her left. Then walked over to me, sat down at my side. She faced my desk as she lowered her left hand and continued, "I've heard that somehow Dominic was able to push the planet over here on his own, but I don't know why. And he stopped it from coming any closer. What the hell's he planning?" "Dunno. My best guess is that he's gonna try something that will either help all of us," "Doubt it," everyone else simultaneously said. "Or," Serena continued, "he's going to collide the two so that they're both crushed and fall into darkness." And what of I was interrupted by a quick and unpredictable burst of pain through the right side of my stomach, spine, and upper chest. In my reaction, my body bent back as I tried to scream out, but I only gave out light noises that sounded as if air was trying to escape. At the same time, Wolf quickly reacted to my pain and used her powers to help relax and heal me. Just as Wolf motioned to ease my body's movement, she said, "Careful, my lord. It hasn't even been a whole 24 hours yet. With your wounds, your body has just barely started to heal, and they have to heal slowly. Otherwise, yeah, I know." My pain settled a bit as I moved to lie flat, then continued, "Damn you, Eyeless." Shadow moved his head up from having it placed over Light's neck, her still sleeping, while he turned to look over at me with a grin and said, "That's the power of Rakar for you, my lord. Shouldn't have underestimated it." I chuckled and reached for Jinx with my right hand, and as I swung it over to aim it at the fox, I said, "Bite me, Shadow." When I aimed the barrel in his direction, without looking but just barely missing Serena's face, I heard both Shadow and Light quickly stand up as they turned to me frightened. With that, Shadow quickly said, Whoa. Okay, man, I'm sorry, chill." "What the hell, Zaec?" Like barked. "Put that away. What's wrong with you?" I turned my head to look over at the two foxes with a smile, then pulled the trigger and heard just the slightest click from the hammer slapping. Shortly afterwards, I calmly said, "Bang." I began laughing as I forced my head to lean back while turning to face Wolf. In my reaction, I dropped my pistol onto the floor just in front of Serena, where she picked it up and placed it back into my coat's holster. As I continued to laugh, Light stared up at me in anger and said, "Damn it, Zaec. That's not funny." She calmed herself just as she sat down, then continued, "You scared the shit out of me. You know what those things can do. Don't just go waving them around like they're toys." She then laid down on her stomach. She looked down at the floor and said, "I seriously thought I was dead." "Yeah." Shadow complied as he laid down next to his sister, placing his left paw over her upper back. "I feel like I lost 8 of my tails, like a cat with 9 lives. Just all but one gone." "I don't think I have any left," Light said as she glanced back at her own tails. She then huddled up against her brother and said, "I'm quivering all over now." My laughter grew, then my pain struck again, and with it, made me cough. The third cough spat up about half a handful of blood into my palm, while my pain increased in my chest and stomach. As my cough settled, and Wolf used some tissue nearby to wipe the blood away from my hand, Light stuck up her snout at me. In a snobby tone, Light said, "Serves you right, asshole." With that, she moved to lay back down with her brother as they both went back to sleep. Serena stood up and motioned to head towards the front door and said, "Well, I'm gonna head out." "What for?" I asked, watching her move around the right side couch, yet glancing at Clea to see the wolf still pacing back and forth across it. "JJ's still out there," Serena replied. "I want to make sure that he's not doing anything that will corrupt our stay here." Just as she opened the front door, she said, "Don't worry, Ray. I'll be fine. I promise." "Serena, don't..." Before I could finish, my wife closed the door behind her. I gave a light sigh as I turned to stare up at the ceiling and said, "Don't fight, JJ, Serena. Please don't." Wolf sniggled as she watched me lie in silence. Then she said, "Don't worry, my lord. She'll be fine." "She's right, my lord," Fox complied as she raised her head up to look over at me. "She'll be alright. After all, you and Wolfie did train her to be strong." "Shut it, peasant," Wolf viciously barked, looking over at Fox with a very hateful expression, almost as if she was ready to kill her. "No one said you could speak to his lordship." Fox bent her ears back as she whined, then slowly lowered her head until she had it lay back down on the floor and quietly said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. It'll never happen again." I motioned to sit up and asked, "Can I speak to you in private, Wolf?" Wolf continued to glare at Fox as I motioned over to the first bedroom, then stood up and turned away to follow me. Just before she closed the door, she called out, "Nanye!" Hibeki jumped up and quickly motioned to the Alicans and asked, "Yes, ma'am." "First off, you don't need to call me that. You and I don't have any problems." Okay, Wolf." "Second," Wolf raised her left hand to point at Fox and continued, "I don't want her to even come near this door." She then lowered her hand and said, "Guard this door. She shouldn't be any stronger than you if she decides to try and get in here. Okay?" Nanya quickly nodded her head a couple times in response. Then as Wolf closed the door, she said, "Thank you." I walked over to the foot of the bed as I gave a few light coughs. Then as I slowly sat down on it, I said, "I feel like an old man." "Technically, you are an old man, Ray," Wolf said with a smirk, moving closer to me. I raised to point my right finger at the Alicans with a smile on my face and said, "Don't make me turn it around on you, Wolf." I then lowered my right hand as I continued, "You are older than me." "Yes, Ray. I'm sorry." Wolf moved to sit down at my left side as she looked over at me and asked, "So what did you want to talk about, my lord?" "Stop it, Wolf," I said as I stared down at the floor. "Please. It's over. I'm done. My empire, along with my entire family, is gone." and for the most part, I don't want it back. Wolf gave me a confused expression while I continued. I never told you this before, but I really hate it when you call me that. I hate everything that my family has gained and gone through, even myself. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the fights. I'm tired of the struggles. I then looked over at her in a great depression and said, I'm tired of the pain, the hatred, and the losses. I can't stand it. I looked back down at the floor and continued, I lost something of the utmost importance, both to you and to me. All because of my damn empire. Please, my lord, enough. Wolf moved her right hand around and placed it on my right shoulder. Then she said, Don't worry about it. It wasn't your fault. It was mine. I should have stopped Buddy when I had the chance. Besides, I don't care for the Empire. Ever since I met you, I've wanted nothing more than to care for you. She then moved her left hand under my chin to turn my head slightly towards her, smiling at me as she continued, to watch you grow and become the handsome and gracious gentleman that you are today. And I have. And I will always want to continue watching over you. I glanced away, confused, and said, Thanks, I guess? Wolf quickly changed her expression to blank, looking away for a moment, said, Shut up. Anyways. We turned back to each other as we chuckled. Then the Alkins continued, Don't worry. She moved to place her head onto my left shoulder. She looked down at the floor and said, Nothing you can ever do will ever make me, or anyone else you know that truly respects you, think otherwise on what a good man you are. Okay? I moved my left hand to scratch Wolf's left ear and responded, Okay. The Alkins moved to sit up straight as she looked back up at me with her smile, keeping me from touching her ears, and asked, Now, is there anything else? What's up with you and Fox? Why are you being so mean to her all of a sudden? Nothing, Wolf quickly replied. She then removed her right hand from me. She stood up and quietly said, Hopefully. She moved to stand directly in front of me. She turned to me and said, Now, we can either Wolf? I asked in a demanding tone. The Alkins glanced around the room as if to ignore me. Then I said, Don't do this. Tell me what's going on between you two. Wolf turned back towards me and said, Nothing. He then motioned to sit on my lap, looking into my eyes with a smile, and said, Now, we can do one of two things, my lord. No. Please, she whined. I stared directly into Wolf's sensual eyes, becoming angry with her as I said, You either tell me what the matter is between you and Fox, or I'm going to get up and walk out of this room, locking you within. Still smiling, Wolf leaned closer to me to have our faces just inches apart and said, You're so mean, master. After a few seconds of silence between us, she realized she wasn't going to win, nor was I going to accept her Joker mentality. Wolf sighed as she moved away from me to stand up straight, where she said, Fine, but it would be best if you spoke to Fox about it first, because I'm only going to get angry as I tell you. Understandable, I said as I motioned to stand. Now, let's go before Serena gets suspicious. Wolf giggled at that, gave me a light kiss. Then she said, A little late for that. Motioning out of the room, she said, Take care, my lord. I followed a few steps behind the Alkins and said to myself, I take it back. All of these women are going to be the death of me. I walked out to notice Wolf already in a conversation with Nanye on the left side couch, while Kalita continued to pace back and forth nervously on the right side couch. At the same time, Baraku had switched his position to have his right side face the kitchen as he laid across my desk. He also watched Kalito with his head down on his paws. I noticed that Blight wasn't anywhere to be found in the room, and Fox had moved out to the balcony in her half-state, crying as she leaned over the wall. When I took a few seconds to examine everything that was going on, I overheard Baraku speak to Kalita as he asked, "Exactly what is it that you're doing?" The goddess just ignored the Hiroga as she continued her nervous pacing. Then Baraku said, "You're just being dumb, you know. Whatever it is that you're worked up about, it's obviously something that you shouldn't actually be putting your mind to." "Shut it," Kalita barked, stopping to face Baraku for a moment. "I'm not used to the mortal realm, and it frustrates me that I can't use some of my powers here." "And that's why you're pacing back and forth?" "No." Without any other explanation, Kalita continued her pacing on the couch, as if undisturbed. I couldn't stand it when I didn't know what was going on with everybody in my family. It just bugged the crap out of me, though I didn't care much for what Kalita had going through her thoughts. And, of course, I couldn't care less about what Father was doing, even if it was something dangerous. So with that, I intended to find out what was up with Fox. Though I had a very good guess as to what could have happened, I still felt it necessary to have full proof. I headed out onto the balcony, trying to keep Fox from noticing me. Then I quietly shut the sliding door so that no one else could hear us talk. At least, not without trying. Afterwards, thinking that she still hadn't noticed me, I walked up next to the Alican's left side and leaned over the wall. "So!" I barked, making Fox jump in surprise as she quickly looked over at me. I then looked over at her with a smile and calmly asked, "What's up with you?" Fox continued to cry a bit as she turned back to watch out into the city, trying to calm down while she replied, "Wolf hates me. She won't even let me try to fix things. I know what she's going through. I know why she hates me. But she doesn't see it. She doesn't see why I had to do it." The Alicans took a moment to cry a little more, then continued, "If I'd let her go, just so that she could help her daughter, then she would have died too." Fox cried some more, then calmed down and said, "I know her. That's how she thinks. That's how she does things. So I did what was right, not what I wanted. I didn't want her to lose her daughter, but I didn't want her to lose her own life too." As the Alicans took another moment to cry, I asked, "And you don't see why that could be the problem?" Fox shook her head, gave a light sniff, then said, "Not only does she hate me, she won't even at least forgive me. She looks at me as if I was an enemy, as if I was the one that killed Bunny. And no matter how hard I try, she won't let me explain myself to her." I looked out into the city as I said, "Yeah, Wolf is a bit stubborn that way." Fox calmed down a little more and said, "Wolf means everything to me. Everything. I can't live without her. She's been my best friend ever since we met. I'd do anything for her. But I won't let her throw her life away. Not for you. Not for Bunny. Not even for me. Call it what you want, selfish, childish. I don't care. She deserves more than that." "She does," I said as I looked back over at the Alicans. "But there's more to it than that." Fox finally stopped crying and quickly looked over at me, surprised and a bit confused, while I continued, "She deserves to have a pack. One that she's never had since she was given to my family as a servant. She wants a true family. And in a true family, everyone is willing to look out for each other and risk their lives for what they believe." Fox glanced out at the city, still confused, then looked back over at me with her expression. You took that away from her, I said, which is why she's mad at you. Even in death, family still lives on. But you wouldn't let Wolf honor herself by doing what she thought was right for her family. Pondering on what I was telling her, Fox turned back towards the city and stared down at what was left of Central Park. She moved her ears back, yet I could tell she was still slightly confused. I turned to look out as well and said, Wolf believed that she could save her daughter, though she had no idea she herself wouldn't survive as well. However, you crushed her faith and forced her into this hatred of you. Finally realizing it, Fox turned around to look through the window of the balcony door, as did I, to see Wolf having a fun time with Nanye as they joked around. She's recovered from that incident and forgotten about it, I continued. I'm sure of that. But it's you that she will never be able to forget, because of what you did that day. The day when she lost her one and possibly only daughter. I raised my right hand up to point my index and middle fingers at the curtains to the left side of the window, then moved my arm across to my right side and used my powers to cover Fox and I from being seen. Just as I did, Wolf looked over to glare at Fox for just a split second in immense anger before the curtains could hide us. Fox dropped to her knees and shed a few more tears, continuing to stare through the window as she felt guilty for what she had done, and asked, So, she would have been better off if she had sacrificed herself than to continue living? Exactly, I replied as I slowly knelt down on my left knee. Though you would have lost a great friend, Wolf would have been at peace knowing that she did what was right, even if it took her own life. I'm sure Wolf knew that you would have moved on. I then smiled as I turned my head to Fox and continued, most likely hanging out with her daughter instead. I laughed at that, yet the Alicans didn't. Then I said, but I'm sure she knew you would be okay without her. After that, I stood up and looked towards the curtains, clapped my hands together once, and said, Now, I'm gonna go see if there is any more sodas in the fridge. Before I could motion for the door to head inside, Wolf grabbed my left wrist with her right hand and said, My lord, I want to ask you something. I looked over at the Alicans, confused, and asked, Okay, what? Fox stood up, still holding onto my wrist, and looked up at me and said, I know I've asked this before, but you didn't really answer me the first time. You just barked at me. Then, for some reason, Fox turned to me and moved closer as she gently grabbed my right wrist with her left hand. When she did, she asked, Do you think I'm too amorous? Remembering when she had asked me that same question before, I quickly gave out a loud laugh and swung my head back as I closed my eyes. Afterwards, I moved to look down at Fox and replied, To tell you the truth, yes. At times you are. That's what Wolf tells me anyways. Unfortunately, that upset Fox, and she looked down as her ears bent down as well. I moved my right hand out from her left to raise it under her chin, gently lifting her head up with my fingers to have her look up at me. I'm sorry, Fox, I calmly said. You're perfect that way, okay? It doesn't demean you or make you weird. I then moved my right hand to gently pet her left ear with my thumb as I continued, It makes you part of our pack, our family. So don't ever change, even for us. Sure, it gets annoying, but hey. I lean back in my chair, knowing it's going to break, but Serena doesn't hate me for not obeying the warnings I get from it. I glanced away for a moment and added, granted, she would strike me if she was very irritated from me constantly doing that. I'm sure what I did with my hand to the Alican's ear might have gained Fox's interest in me a little too much, which wasn't what I was going for. I just wanted her to calm down. Yet it made her happy, so it was worth it. Fox cried one last time, but with tears of joy and a light smile on her face, while her ears popped up, and she said, "Thank you, my lord." She gave me a quick kiss on my lips, then hugged me tight, and she said, "Thank you so much. I love you." She giggled at that, then continued, "But, of course, I love my Wolfie too. More still." She then turned to head back into the room, and she said, "I'll go get the soda for you, my lord. You just go sit down and relax." Just as she entered the living room, she called out to me, "Merry Christmas." I stood, confused, and asked, "Merry what?" Fox just turned back to wave at me, then continued to the kitchen as I said, "Whatever. Stupid human holidays." I headed back in, but somehow collapsed onto my right knee just as I passed the sliding door. I began violently coughing, each one growing in pain as it brought up more blood. After a few seconds, I started to fall forward onto the floor, yet was caught by Baraku and I fell onto his back. Wolf and Nanye picked me up and placed me to lie across the left side couch again. As they did, my coughing calmed down, then I passed out on Wolf's lap as I heard her voice fade away, calmly comforting me. I awoke in a dark place, where I could only see myself, but it didn't feel like the realm of gods this time. I heard the whispers again, several of them, as they all tried to speak to me at once. Some spoke new things, others repeated what I had heard before, with them all speaking calmly and softly. I stood up and called out a couple times to see if anyone would answer. Oddly enough, Sufric and Wardrick answered. I turned to face them to see that they were laying on their stomachs behind me, so they both had their right wrists placed over their left. I motioned over to them to sit about 15 feet away, while crossing my legs to sit down. "Can you hear them?" Wardrick asked. "The whispers?" Before I could answer, Sufric added, "They are the call of ancients, mere remnants of what was left of the old order. They speak only to help that which will bring their renewal." The one called, "Yeah," I interrupted. "I know. The Endelment. I get it." "No," Wardrick said. "Can't you hear it? Listen." Sufric, Wardrick, and I went quiet for a minute to listen in on what the whispers were saying. Indeed, they were speaking about something else. Someone else, actually. They spoke specifically of me. The whispers purposely spoke of Zaec, Raek, and Shero. Yet once we had heard, the whispers finally faded into nothing, as if they had done all they could do. When they disappeared, Sufric said, "Their end has come, but you shall bring forth their rebirth into a new world." These were the old voices, Wardrick added, the ones that were cast aside from the generation of power within the Wavryn kingdom. They resided as a whispering ghost within you, my lord, and only call out to you as a means to redirect you on your path. I looked up to the white dragon and asked, "But why me? Why was I the one chosen for this task?" "What is it that separates you from the others, my lord? What makes you different from them?" "It could be that you broke yourself away from the Empire," Sufric suggested. "Could be that you just don't care about who you are or what you do. It could even be that you like to prove people wrong. You proved Dominic wrong by becoming the strongest out of all the Sheros. You proved Hegu wrong when he thought you didn't have what it took to show that you were the Endelment. You even proved Kuroto, someone that, like you, had never lost a fight in his entire life, that you could best him in a glorious battle. But what we really think is that the ancients chose you to break free of the godly rule that the others had to abide by. The ancients gave their last breath and powers to be reborn into an unbelievably powerful child, so that he could grow with their abilities to cleanse all worlds of their corruption. I glanced around the place, then I looked back over at the dragons and asked, "So, my soul being the way that it is doesn't have to do with anything?" "Of course it does," Zaec barked. "You idiot." "It's not all bad," Wardrick replied. "We can still bicker amongst one another." Glancing at his white dragon brother, Zaec said, "Shut up, brother. There's no need for your sarcasm." Wardrick looked over at his black-scaled brother and said, "Like there's anything you can say to make him feel better." "Never mind." Zaec sighed and looked back over at me, then said, "It means you still haven't changed. Though you've changed your outer appearance to keep yourself from looking like Dominic, you still have doubt in yourself for many things that make you just like him." In response to that, I quickly stood up as I clenched my fists and barked, "That's bullshit!" Zaec stood up to tower over as he continued to look down at me and asked, "Really? Is that so?" Though I didn't want to show it, I was a bit frightened that the dragon stood in response to me. He then started to slowly pace around me as he continued, "You know, being fused in someone else's body, mind or soul, especially soul, can reveal a lot about them to you. For instance, you have the blackened heart of a murderer, just like your father." "Shut it," I said, staring straight out into darkness and anger. "You care only about those that serve you, and care not of those that are far weaker, just like your father. Shut up." Zaec stopped pacing and stood in front of me as he said, "You thirst for power and seek for those who have it, just so that you can kill them and make yourself the one and only most powerful being in existence. Just." He then began inching closer with each word as he continued, "Like your father." I said. I quickly jolted to the black dragon with my right fist raised and pulled back, then jumped up to his face as I swung down and struck him on the top center of his snout. As I struck him, I yelled, "Shut your mouth!" The force of my punch slammed the dragon onto the floor and clamped his jaw shut. Then as I fell, I purposely slammed my feet onto the tip of his snout and squatted down to be eye level with him. While weighing down the dragon's head and looking directly into his right eye with a mean glare, while his eyes stared at me in fear, I viciously said, "I am nothing like that ridiculous Dominion. If anything out of that shit you just said was even the slightest bit true, then this whole planet would have already been obliterated by my hands. My feelings will never be as black and cruel as Dominic's is. My thoughts will never be as sadistic as his. My soul will never fall into a darkened and wild state of power that hungers for death and destruction. Not like Dominic's has. Not like the Dominion." I sprung out a piercer from my right wrist and raised it up to point the tip at Zaec's eye, getting both him and his brother to quiver slightly. Threatening the black dragon, I continued, "So don't you ever compare me to that worthless being of existence that you call my father. I reverted the piercer back into my arm to lower my right hand, then gave a sarcastic smile as I said, "Now why don't you be a good little lizard and stay silent for..." I motioned to look up, pretending to think of something, and said, "Oh, I don't know, maybe..." I then looked back down into Cervic's right eye as I changed my smile back into a mean glare and very bluntly said, "Until I can believe you won't ever speak of that man as my father again. Got it?" Cervic slowly nodded his head a couple times. Then I quickly stood up and grew back my smile and said, "Good." I hopped off the dragon's snout, watching him move behind his brother and peek around to watch me in fear. Wardrick looked back at his brother and asked, "Dude, does he really scare you?" Cervic quickly glanced up at his brother and replied, "What do you think? He just hammered my face into the ground with one swift movement, without any extra improvements to his natural form." He then whispered out loud, "Of course I'm afraid of him." Wardrick turned back to face me and calmly said, "Very impressive, Endelment. You've done what no one, not even I, could do. In fact, just to let you and my brother know, so that he is not alone, I too fear you. But I must warn you, being feared by even just one god can cause problems with the others. Though we can no longer contact our fellow colleagues, they can still sense our presence and our feelings." "Whatever," I barked as I turned away from the dragons, sitting down as I crossed my arms over my chest. "I'm not the Endelment, I'm not my father, and I'm no ancient by any means. You know, I'll just go to hell. I just want my damn soda." "What would it take to convince you then, Ray?" I was silent for a moment, staring down at the floor, then said, "Experiencing death, only to be reborn anew, will be the only way." I then glanced back at the two dragons and continued, "And I know there's no one in existence who can do that. Not even the Endelment." When I turned away, Wardrick chuckled, then said, "That just very well may be. But I must warn you of this before you go. As I said before, I fear you. But I also fear for you. Fear that you could end up with the same fate as the Dominion. So long as you continue to be ignorant and not see what greatness this world has to offer. Bite me. I hate humans." Wardrick sighed at that. Then Cervic said, "Farewell then, my lord." I closed my eyes and waited to return back to my outer world. Shortly afterwards, I heard Wolf gently call out to me one last time, telling me to wake up. I opened my eyes to see that I was back on the left side couch, my head in Wolf's lap, my back on Nanye's, with Serena leaning over my right side. I looked over at my wife just as she said, "About time. You've been out for a whole day." "And?" I asked with a smirk. "What of it? Can't I nap for a little bit on a woman's lap?" "Quipping an ass for 2 seconds," she said with a blank expression. "One, shut up," Serena barked. She then moved herself to stand up straight as she took a step to her right side, smiling while she said, "Merry Christmas, Ray." I watched in confusion as my wife moved down to my lower side. Then I looked back at what she was standing in front of. I noticed Kalita pacing back and forth again, but on the floor as she rubbed up against who was next to her. She then stopped for a few seconds to let me clearly see who it was that she was rubbing up against. Koju. The wolf god gave a smirk at me and said, "As the humans say, Merry Christmas, Endelment. He then tilted his head slightly to the right and asked, "Having fun?" In shock and surprise, I ignored my pain and quickly staggered to climb over the back of the couch. At the same time, I said, "What the fuck?" As I got myself behind the couch, I heard Khalida laugh. Then she said, "I told you he'd flip." Quite literally, it seems, Baraku added from watching my reaction. I sat behind the couch in a slight fetal position, freaked out of my mind. Because not one, but two truly powerful gods were in my home now. And being that Koju is one of the greatest of them all, it was both an honor and a horrid thought that he was on Earth. Serena walked around, looking for me, then motioned over to sit down next to my right side and asked, "What's up with you, Ray?" I motioned to peek over the couch to see where the wolf gods were, then sat back down, so I looked over at my wife and asked, "What the hell is he doing here?" "I don't know. I just found him walking around while I was out. He was in the Mojave Desert trying to find treasure for some random reason. I brought him back about 10 minutes ago. Said he wanted to say hi and speak with his sister." "Why the hell did you have to bring him here?" "What's with you? Why are you acting like this?" "You want to know why? Fine." I then moved my body slightly to face Serena and continued. "First off, both Lord Koju and Lady Khalida are the one and only creators of all things that live in this realm. Direct descendants of Lord Dungray, their father, and Lady Caius, their mother. Both of which created everything within the realm of gods. And that says a lot." So that means those two can remove any of us from existence right now if they wanted to. I've heard that their powers are far more enhanced when they're together." Serena shook her head for a moment, while waving her right hand down at me, and said, "Oh, quit being such a bitch about this, Ray. Shadow and Light are here, aren't they?" "That's different. I can handle idiots. To a certain extent." "We can hear you two, you know," Light bluntly said. My wife and I looked towards her right to see Light sitting with Shadow at his sister's right side. For about a minute, we all sat in silence as Severick and Wardrick laughed out loud in my head. Then I broke the silence on accident with my rough coughing and was helped back to the couch by Serena to recover. This concludes the reading of Chapter 38. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. That being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 39.